Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and welcome back to Elite Dangerous. Very recently, as many of you will no doubt know, a number of mining changes went into the game. Specifically, this affects supply and demand, which in turn affects the bottom line, the amount of credit that you can actually earn. Now in this video I don't want to talk too much about earning potential because the subject really isn't as clear cut or as easy to understand as you might think. I've spent a bit of time looking at this and I know a number of other people have as well, but as yet it's not entirely clear how the market is going to be once it starts to settle down. But what is obvious is that these changes have had an impact on void opal mining. In that regard, it's knocked it down by around about 1 million credits per ton. Right now it's possible to get around about 600,000 credits per ton of void opals, whereas before the update you could get 1.6 million credits. Now this update hasn't affected the low temperature diamonds quite as much, at least not yet. Now low temperature diamonds were sitting around about 1.1 million credits per ton, but they are slowly dropping. I think you can get around about 950,000 credits per ton right now. And yes, it's possible that may continue to drop. It's really not clear just yet exactly what's affecting the new supply and demand system and precisely how it's working, although we are figuring that out. But let's get to the chase on this. This is a nerf. It has impacted earning and to an extent it's hit it quite hard. Now this is nowhere near as harsh as Frontier's previous nerfs. It's not knocking it down by 100% or 200%. In the most extreme cases, it seems to have knocked it down by 50%, and in most other cases, it's far less than that. So it's not an extreme nerf, but it is a nerf. Nonetheless, though, it's still possible to make 100 million credits per hour, or maybe more. For me, though, this isn't really the issue, at least not the main issue. The main issue is how obtuse the actual in-game system is. When it comes to selling the commodities market, personally, I think it's an absolute mess. And I suspect it's quite likely that this mess is what's causing so many people to feel a bit upset about this entire nerf. So let's have a look at what I mean. But first off, I did put a poll up at the end of last week on my community tab on the YouTube channel, just asking people what they thought about the mining changes. And you can see the results right here. So as of Monday, the 20th of January, we can see that over 6,000 people have actually voted in this poll, 49% of which feel that this change wasn't needed and that mining was actually great before. 31% don't actually care, 8% feel the change was too drastic but can live with it, and a minority of 12% actually feel that this was a needed change. Now, don't get me wrong, of course these sorts of decisions can't be made by a vote of popularity. Just because of 50% of the community effectively feel that the change wasn't needed doesn't mean that that is actually so. But what it does tell us is that there are some strong feelings about this, and there's a lot of people who aren't actually happy about it. Now, I kid you not, there are a few people out there who have said that 50% of players are actually playing the game wrong. I'm not going to tell you where those people are who've said that, but I think you could probably guess. But either way, could there actually be an element of truth to that? Is it that most of us, this would include me, don't actually know how to play the game, or that we're playing it wrong somehow? Well, I've actually taken a bit of a look at this. I tried to take a fresh approach to how we could sell low temperature diamonds. So today, I actually went out there and spent a bit of time just tracking down some low temperature diamonds, seeing how many I could get in a set time frame. Yes, they can be fairly difficult to find, even when you're looking in double or treble hotspots. But here we are, we got 17 of them, more than enough for our experiment here. And do remember, we're playing from the perspective of someone who really doesn't have all the major in-depth knowledge of Elite Dangerous. They don't watch YouTube videos, they don't use all the external tools, they don't follow the game every single day. Instead, they're doing what any reasonable game player does, playing the game as intended and as expected. So this does mean I'll be going over a little bit of information that is old hat to some of us. Some of us will be well aware of these things, but nonetheless it's a point that's worth making because I feel it's very relevant to why some people are actually feeling the way they feel right now. Well, in this example, and from this perspective, I was using exclusively the in-game tools. After all, perhaps I'm pretty much a brand new player and I've never even considered using external game tools. How do we find where to send these low temperature diamonds? In fact, the game never goes out of its way to actually explain to us how we actually do this, but nonetheless we can look here on the galaxy map. We can see the import and export icons going on. This gives us a bit of an idea and a bit of a hint on where to look, we can see things going into the ruler system as well as things going out. So this all seems pretty straightforward to my uninitiated mind, to my mind that only follows Elite Dangerous in-game. Let's look for low temperature diamonds. Well, let's cut a long story short. I don't want to be unreasonable here, but the low temperature diamonds are not on this list. Neither are void opals, despite all these things actually having been in the game for well over a year at this point. So essentially, for our purposes, this list is no good. So we still have no idea on where to sell the low temperature diamonds. And this isn't a case of trying to rub salt into the wound, it's a case of basically experimenting and demonstrating how difficult these things are actually to figure out when you don't have tons of external game knowledge. So let's take a bit of a guess then and look at things in terms of the economy. Maybe certain station or system types will actually be suitable. Extraction perhaps, industrial would make sense, perhaps they'd have a use for low temperature diamonds for their manufacturing. Refinery too, maybe high tech. We can see a bunch of different systems here already. The Arula system, I've been there before fortunately, but I still don't know whether or not they actually sell the low temperature diamonds because I didn't check the market when there, but it looks like a reasonable candidate. Let's head over in that direction. So basically what we're doing here is station hopping. That is, travelling from system to system, from station to station, in order to find a market which will actually purchase these goods from us. We can limit the amount of stations we need to jump to with a bit of intelligence here, just going to the right type of economy. But there's also a lot of luck involved. Firstly, we need to hit it right and get to a station that does want to buy these. And secondly, we need to find a station that's got the high demand. If people have already been selling here, then chances are, unfortunately, we won't actually be able to get a decent price. But the only way to find out here is to dock at the station. And again, I will keep reiterating here because some people don't watch the entire video, they skip back and forth, but we're doing this from the perspective of someone who doesn't use out-of-game tools. Well, it turns out that station hopping can work, and using a little bit of intelligence and smarts here, we've managed to track down the right type of economy. So we can get a bit over 400,000 credits per ton here for low temperature diamonds, but we know that these can often sell for over 1 million credits per ton, so where do we find a more reasonable price? Now over on the right of the sell screen here, we can see other stations that will actually buy these. These are only stations that are within a certain range, and they're also stations that I've visited previously, so by no means are we going to automatically find the stations that sell for the highest price. Now I'm not looking for a one-hit button here, but reasonable tools. It's 1,000 years in the future. We do want to feel that our time is well invested, and we'll come back to that particular point towards the end of the video. So at this point, yes, I'm going to jump over to external game tools. We've got the mining tool website here. There's a link for this in the video description. It's highly worth using, so do go and use it. I really do urge you to. And we can see here that we can get well over 900,000 credits per ton in a system very close by. So let's go over and sell them. Now, a nice little thing here on the commodities market is that we can choose any commodity and actually select a view on Galaxy Map. And this will show us all the stations that we've visited and give us a relatively up-to-date price on the chosen commodity. And we can see low temperature diamonds here, but it seems to me the only reason we can see low temperature diamonds is because I've still got some in my cargo hold. The moment we sell these, we will no longer be able to see this information on the Galaxy Map. And that's very odd because we can still see gold, we can still see pretty much any other commodity that we choose, but we can't see these minerals. Whether that's to do with the fact that they aren't listed in the other section of the Galaxy Map, I don't know, but it's frustrating to say the least. But either way, we've now built up a couple of data nodes telling us where we can sell these low temperature diamonds. And I suspect really this is the way that it's intended to be played. Build up your own market data network of places and locations that you can actually sell your chosen products and commodities, and perhaps keep that to yourself and profit. But I'm going to be perfectly blunt here and say that this is far, far, far from an ideal system. And whilst it does work, it is obtuse, and it's pretty clear that this is one of the main reasons that we have so many people shouting about the fact that the void opal mining has been nerfed, because after all, that's a good way of making a profit. And what do we do now? Well, you're going to have to use the rather rubbish in-game tools or rely exclusively on the external tools, which unfortunately, due to the supply and demand changes, are having trouble keeping up to date with actual real-world prices. That's simply because the market is now very volatile, and that prices can change at a moment's notice. Just because we can sell low temperature diamonds here for 950,000 credits, it doesn't mean that this is going to be true in 5 minutes from now. So this leads me to a rather singular conclusion. Either the markets are far too volatile at the moment and Frontier need to dial these back, or else something has gone wrong with the implementation of the supply and demand system, and yep, that still leaves the markets far too volatile, but hopefully in either case this is unintended. But on the other hand, if this is intended, then really we need far superior in-game tools, as well as giving functionality to third-party developers to improve the external third-party tools. Now, I'm sure you'll have seen many comments out there, and I've said it myself in the video, that it is still possible to earn 100 million credits plus an hour with mining, but that's not really the point. No one wants the game to be super easy. We don't want a one-hit win button. But what we do want is a game that isn't obtuse, a game that doesn't put unnecessary blockers and hurdles in your way that just don't make any form of logical sense. So I'm not against these mining changes or the supply and demand improvements, far from it in fact. But the game needs to be built around these things accordingly. They can't just be thrown in willy-nilly, which is where it seems at the moment. Especially when you consider a vast ton of these players don't ever visit the forums. They probably don't ever visit any other online community, and that includes watching YouTube videos like this one. If you're stuck there playing on your PlayStation 4 in front of the telly, you got your mobile phone miles away from you, you're just zoning out, chilling out, playing Elite Dangerous, and you want to do a bit of mining and you want your time to be well rewarded. This isn't a racing game after all, it's not a game of Street Fighter. If you're playing a game of Rocket League, then you're probably quite happy just to sit down and chill out to the experience. When it comes down to an MMO like Elite Dangerous, one of the main focuses is to achieve a particular aim, a particular objective. And when the game prevents you from achieving such objectives, and not through difficulty or having to use your brain, but through sheer obtuseness, through sheer obscurity, then that's really not an ideal position for a game to be in. So for me, the takeaway points here are twofold. On the one hand, we got these changes to the supply and demand. I think they're fair, I think they're reasonable, I think it's a good idea, and I can totally understand where Frontier are coming from. You want a living and breathing economy, and we want the game to reflect that, a dynamic world. And yes, I will have a video on that particular idea very soon, so do keep an eye out for that. So yeah, a good idea all in all. But on the other hand, we have implementation and the knock-on effect that this actually has for the players. In this particular case, I don't think that's all that great. Firstly, because the information hasn't been communicated that well. We don't know what's intended versus what's unintended. Secondly, relying on the in-game tools and to an extent the external tools really doesn't paint a much clearer picture. And sure, there's plenty of people out there trying to figure this all out right now, and without a doubt I'll have a video on this very soon with my own conclusions as I experiment and actually figure out what's what. But ultimately, should that really be the case? Should that be something we have to do? And just perhaps that is a huge part of the reason we have 50% of the community a bit upset about these changes. Not because of the changes themselves, but just perhaps because it's not easy to understand exactly what is going on here. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.